Okay, welcome to the Indonesia Project's COVID-19 webinar series. My name is Arianto Patunru and I'm hosting this event with Nurkamala Mulyani and Baskara Adiwena. We acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians and pay our respect to the elders, past and present. We are grateful for the support from the Australian National University and also the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Today we are discussing COVID-19 infodemic in Indonesia, and we're very grateful to have Tapsell from ANU, Restu Putri from Tirto.id, and Taufiqurrahman from the Jakarta Post. Ross will set the scene with his overview of Indonesia's digital media landscape. Restu will talk about difficulties and challenges in reporting COVID-19. And Taufik will discuss the future of journalism with experience of the Jakarta Post. For example, how his newsroom deals with COVID-19 pandemic. As usual, we will have question and answer session at the end. But now let me start by inviting Ross to kick off the seminar. Over to you, Ross.
Thanks, Archo, and thanks to the Indonesia Project for hosting this seminar. I will just share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to start by just giving an overview of the digital media landscape and talking about three things. One is the potential or clear decline of professional journalism and the financial models around professional journalism, which have been really exacerbated due to COVID. The second point is the rise of financial services through PR companies in the digital space, which can be viewed in a number of aspects in the way in which money is being poured into, say, digital campaign type activities. And then finally, I'll look at the trends that we're seeing in around online and social media news in Indonesia, which again has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So the first thing to give you an overview about is the shifting nature of the professional media in Indonesia. Obviously, for quite some time, there has been this impact of the media convergence in the industry, and this has led to large conglomerates dominating much of the mainstream Indonesian media. In short, big media has become bigger in the digital era, and it's been harder for smaller, more independent media to survive. Classic example of this is, say, Detik.com being bought up by the Trans Corporation, which is owned by Khairul Tanjung, and many other examples that would be prevalent of more independent media being bought up by conglomerates. So in many ways, COVID-19 is, to quote a media executive, the final nail in the coffin for many media outlets, largely because advertising revenues are declining rapidly, simply because we are in a recession or a depression, and that means that it's very difficult for media companies to gain the advertising revenues that they were originally gaining, which was declining anyway in the digital era, which we know about. All of this is documented prior to the pandemic in a book I wrote, Media Power in Indonesia. I put a picture up here just because books publishers are really struggling during the pandemic. So if you have a chance, go to Marjan Kiri, which is the publisher of my book, and just buy it. You don't have to buy mine, but just buy some books from them. Marjan Kiri is a wonderful publisher, and they've translated my book, and it'd be great if you could just buy a book, because it's really hard. Believe it or not, when people are sitting at home and people are consuming news, that they're actually the media publishers and booksellers are really struggling. So a July report asked 140 Indonesian media companies and found that they're losing between 40 to 80% of advertising income. And it was in this report, it said that many would only survive until later in the year. And we have seen layoffs at Jawa Post. There's been discussions of layoffs at Tempo. Jawa Post's financial situation has been well documented for quite some time as an organization that survived or really pushed through this idea of local news in various provinces of the archipelago, obviously they are struggling to get advertising revenue. Already pre-pandemic, most of the advertising revenue for local media in Indonesia, local journalism in Indonesia, was funded in large parts by government advertising, which was problematic in itself. But it's even more problematic during the pandemic, when the only way that newspapers can gain advertising revenue is from government public relations or humas type funds. Has been well documented, and Pak Taufik will hopefully discuss this further, where the Jakarta Post circular said that 2/3 of staff would be retrenched by November. There was also a recent 11-page circular summarized as sort of internal conflict between Jakarta Post management and the newsroom. There's really discussions around how to save the company. So really the question is, as employees have resigned, how is the Jakarta Post a viable organization? And Pak Taufik can talk more about this later. At the same time, we're seeing this rise in funds or funding or this industry, the digital industry, growing. A recent Indonesian Corruption Watch report found that there were 90 billion rupiah on influencers funded by the Indonesian government. Now, to be fair, 77 billion of that was tourism, and I spoke on a panel with Ichewe about this. And you know, funding influencers for tourism is not a rare thing globally. Australia does that as well, and of course, you know, a lot of this was to promote Indonesian tourism beyond Bali. Nevertheless, we are definitely seeing a rise in the amount of money which is spent on digital activities by the government. That includes the Ministry of Communication, and as their subsequent report found, on digital activities of the police force. And if you go on Twitter or Facebook and look at sort of local police activities, they're quite active on social media promoting their work, even in really small regions of their archipelago. And of course, one of the big discussions this year has been around the role of buzzers during the omnibus law, which the government denies paying, but it's certainly created controversy. And a chapter in this book, which is recently published by ICES, edited by myself and Aim Sing Peng, is written by Muninga Sri Saraswati, who writes about the rise of buzzers in Indonesia as a political force and as an essential component of digital campaigning in Indonesia. And so I very much encourage you to, you can buy just that chapter if you're interested in Indonesia, or you can buy the whole book online at the ICES bookshop. And her argument is that we've seen a growth of this since 2012, since the Jakarta election in 2012, and it's only grown since. So on the one hand, you have journalism and funds for professional journalism declining, while at the same time, money for digital PR or government digital activities are growing exponentially. This, of course, has large implications for democracy and Indonesia's freedom of the media or freedom of the net. The recent rankings have Indonesia's 124, which is worse than its 2009 ranking of 100 in Reporters Without Borders. Indonesia always ranks fairly poorly on these surveys, largely because of the situation in Papua. You know, one doesn't expect that it would be always ranked very well, but it is a concern that we've seen a drop in the ranking. The 2019 Freedom of the Press and Freedom of the Net report both call Indonesia partly free. The 2019 report notes the concerning politicization of Undang-Undang ITE, which suggests that we are seeing an increasingly politicized use of Undang-Undang ITE, and we've seen that most recently in the Jerinx case for insulting the Indonesian Medical Association, in which he received 14 months jail. In terms of media media reach, we are, of course, like everywhere in the world, seeing this rapid growth of Indonesian consumers. The percentage of Indonesians who have internet access, who use YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram on a daily basis is incredibly high. And Twitter, by the way, is about 52%. So quite a gap there. But the interesting stat here really is the rise of Instagram at 80% now, and literally almost the same as Facebook. Remember, Indonesia was once declared as like this Facebook nation. Jakarta was once the capital city of Twitter. But what we're seeing in Indonesia is the rise of Instagram amongst urban middle class. And that is really becoming a much more influential source of news and information. Scholars have written about this in the context of Islamic preachers being really influential on Instagram. But I'm looking at this more recently in the way in which news, particularly local news, is more influential on Instagram. So here's just some examples of what Sita Dewi, a former Jakarta Post journalist, and I are doing some research on at the moment, looking at infodemic, for example, in the lead up to the Pilkada Tangerang Selatan, and looking at this rise of local news sites on Instagram, which you wouldn't think would make much money, but Sita has done some interviews with some of these people and found that their monthly revenues can vary to as high as around 30 million rupiah a month. And some of them have between 4 and 10 staff, sort of working at around the same pay that they would get as a local entry journalist, depending on the news organization, of course. So there is money there in the way that they seem to be able to gather advertising for Instagram, but potentially, of course, paid by certain organizations. And this is what we're looking at in the lead up to the Pilkada. I also couldn't help but look at the Pilkada in Tapanuli Selatan, largely for the memes that I'm accumulating about myself. But it's fascinating to read some of these public group announcements and the way in which people engage with local news on social media now. This is particularly important in the case of the pandemic. You could argue that more than ever, local news is crucial as we think about large-scale social distancing in certain provinces or certain areas, the status of the local hospitals or schools, the case numbers in your daerah or your province, or even just in your street that some of these local news sites are able to convey. Now, will they turn more partisan during election day in the local Pilkada? That's what we're there to watch. And in other areas of Southeast Asia, such as in the Philippines, it suggests that they will, and that a larger network of actors is able to buy off some of these sites. So all of this hopefully gives you an insight into where the local news is framed at the moment, and some of the concerns that we can think about Indonesia's broader digital public sphere. I'll now pass on to Restu next to talk about the specifics of reporting during a pandemic.
Well, thank you, Ross. That is very good scene setting. And it provided good segue to the next topics, for which I invite now Restu to talk about the challenges in reporting COVID-19 in Indonesia. So Restu, Diantina from Tirto.id.
Okay, thank you, Mas Arianto, and Ross, of course. Also, thank you to Australian National University for this good occasion. First of all, I must apologize for my terrible English, but I try my best. So I hope you get my point. Well, speaking about pandemic situation in Indonesia, I may say that the government is not ready and incompetent to handle this kind of situation, even though we already have the health quarantine law. So we push the government, with the journalists by the articles, we push the government to the mass COVID-19 test. But instead of that, the government underestimated the virus. They say we are immune to the virus because the weather here, the spices we consume, etc. Well, there is still zero confirmed case. Instead of close the country from foreigners, the government widely opened the country for tourism. They say they took the opportunity because many countries closed their door for tourists. They spend, like was said before, around.
Restu, do you want to use your slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Like Rose said before, around 72 billion rupiah government spent to endorse influencers promote the Indonesia tourism. This is the article that we wrote. We said that the rupiahs, the funding incentive for influencer in the beginning of pandemic shows the government is not ready yet.
So Restu, if you can maximize the display by pressing the display setting. Yes, that one, and duplicate. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the articles. We critics the governments that they are not ready yet because instead of close the country before the any single company can enter to Indonesia, they open widely the countries from foreigner tourism. And this is one of the Twitter account. His point is this one of the example, and this is the other example that show how the government underestimated the virus from the very beginning. This is Terawan, Ministry of Health. He said that the common flu is more dangerous on March 2nd, and this is the Mahfud MD, Coordinator Minister of Political, Legal, and Security Affairs. He said that COVID-19 just like unconquerable life, so we just live with it. Yeah, this is articles about Minister of Agriculture Syahrul Yassin Limpo introduced Corona necklace made by eucalyptus. And the right one is there are Indonesia singers Yunisara and Iis Dahlia that endorsed the necklace by wearing them. In July, President also invited influencers to promote health protocol to society instead of open the discussion with medical workers or scientists how to control the outbreak. So it seems like government decided to mobilize the buzzers and influencers, and that is we believe that is the part of their propaganda. It's quite ironic when the misinformation comes from the government itself. Another challenge that we have to face, the journalists, is the government data is not reliable enough because of these reasons. WHO ever said that the result of COVID-19 tests in Indonesia takes so long. It needs 5 to 7 days, so it cannot represent the real situation. Also, WHO keep reminding Indonesia that the number of cases still underreported. Epidemiologists also said that we, the journalists, especially, and people for general, need to be careful reading the government data because until now we don't have epidemic curve. But unfortunately, their data is the only official source, but we can still process and analyze from that. I saw you some articles, for example, this one is collaboration project. These articles wrote about those who died unrecorded and were not tested during pandemic in Yogyakarta. They found that there are 60 funerals with COVID-19 protocol in Yogyakarta in 34 days. In the official source said that the death numbers in Yogyakarta are still in seven days, only 7 days. I don't say only, like, I mean only 7 deaths, but our finding is there are 60 funerals with COVID-19 protocol. And the critics say that the funerals with COVID-19 protocol also have to report it as a COVID-19 deaths. But government don't want to report it as a COVID death because it's gonna be rise the number of deaths. This is another article. The number of deaths, like I said, will rise if Indonesia open all the death suspect numbers. So this is the suggest from epidemiologists that the number of death suspect also have to report it as a COVID-19 death. When the number of cases is getting bigger over the time, governments still don't have proper information center about COVID-19. And it happened for weeks, so we kind of frustrated that time. There is no such reliable data as a basis of our reports or stories. So I decided to make our own bank data. We collect data from the COVID-19 speakers at that time before the task force range from speakers' press statement, of course, and I collect it manually, and I made visualization from that, most of them by using the flourish chart. The other thing is when government try to redefine of COVID-19 deaths, government, it's begin with government East Java, Governor East Java, Kofifa Indar Parawansa was reported suggested government to redefine of COVID-19 death from caused by COVID-19 and their comorbid disease to caused by only COVID-19. It happened when the East Java become the black zone. Meanwhile, WHO asks all countries to expand the definition so that suspect death numbers will be reported as COVID deaths as well. We in Newsroom believe that that was the government way to manipulate the number of COVID deaths. The other challenge is the government often make overclaim statements about their achievement handling the pandemic. So we in Newsroom don't buy it just like that. This situation makes us must to verify them very carefully. These are some examples. This is Terawan where WHO published the invitation about invitation to Terawan because his successful story to control the outbreak in Indonesia. And when WHO invited Minister of Health, Mr. Terawan Agus Putranto, people thought that it's because he's considered successful in handling pandemic situation. But we in Newsroom, just like, how come we know exactly what's happening here? People are dying, medical workers are burned out and dying as well, but government treat us like a big joke. So we really doubt that WHO invite Terawan for this for that condition. So we searched for the original invitation and found that the invitation actually wrote, and to share Indonesia's experience for successfully conducting a national COVID-19 ARR. ARR means review, and applying critical lessons identified the IAR for the improvement of COVID-19 outbreak response. So in other words, Indonesia successfully just finished the review. It doesn't mean Indonesia has success to control the outbreak. And that invitation was misinterpreted as recognition from WHO toward Indonesian success handling the outbreak of COVID-19 by the media like this. Dianggap sukses. Terawan's success handling the pandemic situation in Indonesia. But after we search for the original invitation, we attend. My reporter and I attended to the Zoom meeting that Terawan was invited, and we got the point. This is not about success story of Indonesia government control the outbreak, and this is the articles we publish about that, understanding the WHO invitation to Terawan and how government overcame it. And this is another overclaim statement from government. They said that they're successfully to flattening the curve. And we read the articles, how come the government claimed that? This is another example. Government claim COVID-19 test in Indonesia nearly close to WHO standard. But we have to, yes, it is, but we have also to, see the, look at the WHO recommendation to Indonesia that WHO always reminding Indonesia to increasing their ability to do the test, to do COVID-19 tests, because there's still wide gap between the suspect and the number of tested. Okay, that is the content, but in internal newsroom, this is how we deal with the pandemic situation. Reporters strictly not allowed to report from the fields because it's gonna raise our reporters and photographers. And we believe that there is no news that worth as much as our lives. So also we cut the office hours. For now, we only have 6 hours office hours. Of course, this situation is hard for us to produce such a good quality journalism, especially for in-depth reporting. Moreover, Tirto is well known with our long-form story. It's quite impossible to cover the story without report from the fields. We're fully aware about that. We can't confirm the sources, especially the hard ones that you can't reach only by phone or emails. You can't feel the ambience, you can't feel the emotion, you can't describe the setting to the readers. And the consequences is, if we still do it, our report felt so not powerful enough for the readers. So we count on collaboration project and data journalism, but we cannot depend only on government data because the trust issue is like I said before. Thankfully, there are some NGOs like Pandemic Talks and Tirto.id, also the epidemiologists that help us to analyze government data, and at the end we can produce such a comprehensive data journalism story. I must to describe the our financial struggling. We have to admit that we are here struggling, yes. Before pandemic, October 2019 to March 2020, our revenue from advertisement every month can cover the operational cost, all cover operational cost. But during PSBB or social distancing in macro scale, our revenue from advertisement sharply decreased to 20 to 30% of our regular revenue. In other words, we lost around 800 million to 1 billion rupiah during the period. But investor will adjust their funding to the revenue from advertisement. So if the revenue from advertisement is decreasing, the investor will increase their funding and vice versa. Okay, I think it's all for me. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much, Restu. That's very interesting, and also thanks for sharing with us the challenges that Tirto.id is facing. So from Tirto.id, we move to Jakarta Post. Give the floor to Taufik. Taufiqurrahman is the chief editor of the Jakarta Post. Over to you, Vic.
Okay, thank you, Bang Acho, and thank you, the Indonesian Project, for giving me the opportunity to. But this is going to be mainly about the Jakarta Post, I think, and I believe I have prepared a slide, but after 9 months, I don't think I have mastered the art of Zoom presentation, so I just dropped it, and I'm just going to speak about what I experienced at the Jakarta Post. And I think this morning, I think it's one of indication how people care about the Jakarta Post. I believe, especially after that the news broke, there's been an outpouring of support from almost everyone, and they have offered help to us, technically, financially, but yeah, we're still trying to find the best options to do that. But again, this morning session, I think one of the manifestation of support for the Jakarta Post, and I'm really grateful for every support that outside parties have given to the Jakarta Post. And I'm really happy that this morning we're going to just talk about the media instead of Rizik or the arrest of this minister, which I think is somehow connected, but that's for another discussion. Yeah, maybe I'm just going to start by setting the scene. Earlier this year in the newsroom, I think COVID initially, and I think this is the first and second month of 2020, we have seen an explosion of traffic, and this is for obvious reason. Bad news is always good for business, and I think this is shortly before we had those 2 patients announced by President Jokowi. So basically, people fear that something terrible will happen, and sooner or later it will hit the shore, and it will arrive in Indonesia. So the first 2 months, we at the Jakarta Post, I think, and this is right until March, we have seen a huge spike in traffic, because I think since 3 years ago, we have made this transition to sort of going heavily online. And I think the first 2 months of COVID, we have seen that experiment paid off. We have huge amount of traffic going to our website, and this is mostly from COVID. And I still remember, I think the big editorial meeting that we had, this is in late February, was and this is when we still work at the office, and this is how to capitalize on those big traffic. And I think that in that last meeting, we have agreed to sort of, okay, we're going to focus mostly for online, and we're going to publish online first. This is something that we have planned for so long, and finally we found the moment to do it. And I think by the end of March, again, the focus, the shift online paid off. I think you may not know about this, but I think that's for the first time in our history, we have the highest number of traffic going to a website, and that translated into Google Ads money to us. And we expect that to be, okay, at least if this is going to last for a year or 6 months, that's going to be good for us. But unfortunately, and I think this is well documented also in any other parts of the world, and also I think this also happens in any other news publication. I think that that's only a one-time thing. So the largest amount of money from Google Ads happens only that 1 month in March, and that didn't happen again. And some of the reports said that, okay, people don't want to put ads next to a story about COVID, and this is all over the world. This is happening anywhere. So so this is I think March is only, I think that's the exception to the rule. It's just a freak of nature. It happens only once, and we went downhill from there. And because COVID, with the social distancing, with the lockdown, with air travel, with tourism came to a complete stop, then, and you have to expect that the circulation will, because we still really rely on circulation. I think a huge chunk of our revenue still come from print, because the Google experience doesn't work out apparently. So the Google money didn't came to us. So yeah, circulation really took a hit, and this is happening around April, and also the ads from print publication also drying up, because the economy is basically coming to a stop. So that's, I think, the sort of the twin problems that we have. The money from online ads is sort of stop, and then the money from print ads also dried up because of the economic situation. The circulation, of course, is also dropped because the hotel doesn't open, the air travel doesn't, it's no longer there. So that's really took a hit on us. And I think you should know that the Jakarta Post has never been about profit, because right until around 4 years ago, this is still a sustainable operation. We're not I don't believe that throughout our existence we made a ton of money from doing journalism, but at least this is a sustainable operation. We have we have profit here and there, but it's not really that big amount of money. But we managed to sustain the operation until around 4 years ago, when and this is basically the effect of the changing landscape. Money going to online publication, and all the changes that I think Dr. Tapsell mentioned earlier in the presentation. So in the last 4 years, the financial situation is not really that good, and then COVID hits. So it's really really a sort of a double whammy. And the irony of the situation, if I can use the word irony correctly here, the irony of the situation, after learning that in the past 4 years we expect that the trouble will come ahead, we started to sort of make a big plan. So, and this is shortly before COVID, we came up with a big expansion plan, or if I can say it, this is a big investment plan to sort of improve how we operate, how we expect to have expansion in multimedia. We also plan to do more of our in-house contents. We want to expand our presence on social media. So shortly before COVID, ironically, we had a big expansion plan. But and in January, in February, COVID hit. So not only that we didn't have the capability anymore to sort of go on with this expansion plan. The fact of the matter is we are struggling even further financially. So yeah, and that came to the problem that we're dealing right now. So in August, I think the management, and I have to say the shareholders, decided, okay, times are tough, and not only that, we have to put on hold the big investment plan. If anything, we have to do something about the existing situation, simply to sort of allow the Jakarta Post to stay afloat first, because I think the shareholders agreed that everyone needs to maintain the Jakarta Post presence, because many people said to me that they cannot imagine the Indonesia without the Jakarta Post. So I think the shareholders decided to maintain the presence of the Jakarta Post for the foreseeable future. But given the difficult situation, yeah, the shareholders decided to, the most sensible, the most plausible plan is to have this sort of reduction in the number of staff. And I was quite surprised that Mbak Restu told us about, you said 120. I think we're even smaller than that. And I think the decision to have less number of staff indicates, you know, the depth of the problem, because we're smaller than that, and we still need to cut down. So yeah, so that sort of shows us the severity of the situation confronting the Jakarta Post. And now we're still negotiating, and I think you have seen some of the document being circulated by the union. We're still in the stage of negotiation, and formally the sort of the layoff program has not happened yet. What happened so far is sort of the voluntary resignation. And with so many people leaving, I think that's only natural that will affect our operation on a daily basis. And I think Dr. Tapsell mentioned something crucial about how to, you know, to sustain good journalism if you have, you know, smaller number of people in the newsroom. But I took over during this very difficult situation, and I'm just going to be very realistic. I'm going to do whatever I can sort of to maintain the operation, and probably it's just going to go back to basic doing stories, like big stories, because I think the initial plan was, okay, we're going to break every story that matters. We're going to do every breaking stories, but I think it's not going to be realistic with a smaller number of staff. So we decided to just go back to basic, doing essential journalism, producing only premium contents, and we're going to do that in a more sustained basis in January, because we expect that, okay, this negotiation will be over, and then we can expect to have a smaller team and operate in a more, I don't want to say efficient basis, but we expect to have sort of a smaller team, and we can do some of the most essential, the basic products that we have been doing in the past 30 years. We're going to still print the paper. We're going to break story occasionally because of the smaller number of team. But on the financial side, I think in the past 3 months, things have started to rebound, actually. Also, I think Dr. Tapsell mentioned about government spending for local newspaper. I think, yeah, and this is like this is pattern happening every year when nearing the year end, the government rush to use up all their budget. And I don't know if you're aware of this, and this relates to COVID. This is through Satgas COVID. I don't know if Tirto got this project as well. Yeah, I think you got the project as well. So basically, this is Satgas COVID deciding to have a huge public relation campaign, and this is basically you can print whatever you want, you can publish whatever you want, but this is going to be considered as sort of public service announcement, and the Satgas, or the government through Satgas, they're going to help us pay for the cost of publishing the news. But I have to say it comes with, I don't know, it's going to be a problematic, but there's no string attached. They basically want us to help them with the social distancing campaign, washing your hand frequently, and I think most of major newspapers and TV station, radio station, I think got the project. And and during this difficult time, this is quite a big help for media outlets to sort of help them stay afloat during this difficult time. And again, I have to say that while it may not be good in terms of journalism, but yeah, it helps a number of outlets. I think most media outlets in the country to sort of stay afloat, at least pay for the operation in the last 3 months. So yeah, I think that's one of some of the things that I can share, and I think we can have a sort of wider discussion in the question and answer session. I'd be happy to answer some of the questions. Back to you, Bang Acho.
Well, thank you very much, Taufik, for sharing these stories. Very interesting. Before we go to Q&A, I would like to encourage some interaction among you speakers. And because I'm not expert on this, I'm very glad that Ross has agreed to facilitate such interaction. So let me turn over to Ross.
Thanks, Acho. Yeah, just while people are typing in their questions, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and Acho and others will facilitate that, and then we'll try and get to as many as possible. But just while you're doing that and answering polls and so on, I guess my first question is to discuss this idea of investor funding. So Restu, you said that the investors will increase the funding to Tirto, recognizing that the advertising revenue has declined, which sounds like a very positive outcome for Tirto. But Taufik, it sounds like that's not the case in the Jakarta Post. And so is that the big difference, that the Wanandis who used to pour money into the Jakarta Post are just no longer doing it?
Okay, maybe I'm going to take this first. So I think the situation with the Jakarta Post is a little bit more complicated because I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a number of shareholders in the Jakarta Post. We also have other media companies investing in us, or they have shares in the Jakarta Post. And one of them, for instance, is, of course, Kompas Gramedia and other media companies, which is also struggling right now. So this is really a tough situation for everyone in the circle of shareholders. Even for shareholders who have their business outside of the media, their business is sort of affecting their bottom line. And I mentioned earlier about the big investment plan for the Jakarta Post. We sort of expect to have outside party investing on us. And the reason it probably didn't happen is because they also have problems simply because of COVID.
That was Jarum, right?
Yeah. This is well publicized. So they stumble into the same problem. So that's
No, it's a really interesting challenge as to who can put money into a media company. Can media companies be sustained by investors, shareholders who are also media companies, which Jawa Post has got a problem with as well, right? Or people who were previously media people, but now you sort of need a billionaire on board in some ways. Of course, Australia has similar problems around media ownership with Rupert Murdoch, very well documented. Restu, there was this concern in Tirto last year, I think, that that investors were getting cold feet and were looking to pull out money. So can you explain why there's this shift? I think a lot of people were concerned that maybe there would be no more investor into Tirto, and now there seems to be. Any secrets that you can share?
I don't think I have competence for that, but I can say that yes, the investor still give the funding for us, but it's limited. It's limited. So even it makes the management to pay the Lebaran pay, holiday is such a holiday religion allowance to us in 3 terms. Usually it has to be paid in one time, but they just can't they just can't afford pay full in one time. And this is the situation, and for now I think the Satgas project is our biggest revenue.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just like Mas Taufik said that yes, it is our biggest revenue, and I think it's not just in this situation. It's just that happened in Tirto, but also in other medias.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting, and to see whether there will be any quid pro quo to come with this money from the government. And if it is, as you say, and it's about helping large-scale social distancing and washing hands, then that makes sense, right? It's a good public advocacy campaign. But Taufik, in Restu's presentation, she talked a bit about the difficulty of statistics and relying on government data. What's your take on some of this stuff? So, for example, I think Jokowi said the other day that Indonesia recorded 12.78% active cases, which is lower than the global average of 28.41%. So therefore, you know, Indonesia is not doing badly. I think he said Indonesia has a better average recovery rate of 84%, while the global average was 69%. So how do we make sense of this? These statistics. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, and I think this also happened with Tirto. I think from early days of COVID, because I think we have come to an agreement that I think when it comes to dealing with this pandemic, I think the government is sort of and this is sort of the problem. I think this is the earlier discussion mentioned about this sort of the populist leader. They try to sort of couch this as sort of neutral term. They don't want to talk about this very much. They don't want to take this seriously. And I think from the very beginning, and even when the president decided to announce those two first patients, we have suspected that, okay, the government probably not telling the truth, and afterwards we're starting to sort of question everything that they have given to us in terms of information. I think we sort of, especially in this necklace, the COVID necklace story, I think that's sort of the epitome of the, I don't know, incompetence of this government official. So yeah, I think and this. I think this has been an agreement among our editors and reporters in the newsroom to always question the government data, government statement. And I think in October, this is after Jakarta wrapped up with the second PSBB, and we see a huge number of cases spiking. And we had a Monday headlines basically telling Jokowi that after 3 months, we have a serious problem. And I think we have seen some changes after that. I don't want to say that this is because of the story, but we just want to give, the government a reality check that, okay, the problem may be more severe than what you have told us. And again, back to the money from Satgas, that somehow did not affect how we report on the story, because they just want us to sort of campaign on the 3M, the social distancing measures. So yeah, I think that's sort of the position that we had in the newsroom.
Sure. Okay, Achal, do you want to? Oh, sorry. Restu, yeah.
Oh, did Restu want to say something?
Yeah, actually, the same situation happened to Tirto, that in newsroom we always questioning that what the government states, what government data said, because it's just not make sense. We have, we have very large population, and the number of cases is very low, I think, for this kind of for this enormous population. So we asked for the help to some NGOs like Covid.co.id and Pandemic Talks. They usually have some reports help us to analyze the government data. Actually, yes, the government data is such a disorganized, but we still can analyze that, because for example, like the number I forget the date, but there is one day that the cases of the number is decreasing, like 2 times than before than yesterday, but we also have to see look at the number of suspect and the number of tests as well. So we can analyze that yes, the case is decreasing, but it because of the number of tests is also decreasing, something like that. So that is how we make it the information still make sense for the readers and give them the maybe the closest from the real situation. And also we ask the another sources and other sources, like in the articles I talk about in Yogyakarta, our reporters also ask the local institution about the data. So they already report the data, but they still have the raw data, and we ask about them, and from that we can still analyze that. And speaking about the Satgas project, yes, it doesn't make any intervention for our content, so I think it's okay, and it's like our pragmatic way maybe, because usually we will not accept that project actually in normal situation, but for now I think we have to still thinking as a pragmatic way to survive.
Thank you, Restu, Taufik, Ross. Let's now move to question and answer. I see one hand raised and 2 hands. First, Ben Bland, and then Mas Budi Resa Sudarmo. Ben? Okay, you go first, Ben.
Okay. Hi guys, thanks so much for the updates, and thanks for all the good journalism that the Jakarta Post and Tirto is still doing, really important. I have a question about the role of Facebook and Google, the social media giants, because here in Australia, the government has regulated to try and force Facebook and Google and Twitter to pay for media content. So my question for Taufiq and Restu is, would you support a similar kind of measure in Indonesia? Do you think it could be effective, or would you worry about being reliant, A, on funding from Facebook and Google and Twitter, and B, from actually being reliant on government regulation, given the government is not necessarily that friendly to critical media? Do you think this sort of regulation in an Indonesian context might end up favoring non-critical media and actually not really serving the needs of accountability and transparency? Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Before we answer, let's hear a question from Mas Budi.
Yeah, thank you, Acho. So I have 2 general questions. One is related to what Ben said. So in my opinion, influencer is a kind of journalism as well. And do you think that the formal journalism, like what you guys doing, at one day will also not move, but also trying to occupy the media that has been used by influencers? So we have seen that when the digital come, then all the printing journal has the digital version. So would you think that this is also happen in a different in the media that all these influencer use? That is one. Second is that I'm sorry if I'm saying this, but the fail that Indonesia respond to COVID have 2 aspects. One is, yes, it might be the government that is resistant, but on the other hand is that the other source of information in which media playing a big part of it is not able to basically change the mood on the society. And just wonder why that is so, given news around the world has been suggesting that more reactive are needed. And I haven't seen that a strong, at the beginning, a strong statement against the government. What is going on, or maybe I was wrong in looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Budi. So let's take those two questions first. Maybe Taufik can go first.
Okay. Yeah, I think I still remember this very vividly. I think I still have access to our CMS, and I think when that news broke about that the Australian government will impose on Facebook and Google that they have to pay for news, I think I myself decided to upload the news, because I think this has been I'm going to be the first one to break this news, because this is so important for us. And I think this has been our stance from the very beginning. If we can do this, if this is possible, I believe that all these news aggregators, they should have, well, they have to pay us for doing journalism. They cannot just provide the platform. And because now, and this is shortly before COVID hits, we have to pay for our products to be distributed by them. Because, okay, we can use the free service, but if you want to reach a larger number of audience, you have to pay for and you must aware of this, to boost the content. And we have spent quite a lot of money for that, for Facebook and Google. And in return, we only get traffic, which didn't translate into significant amount of revenue. So yeah, I'm totally on board with having the government, paying this news aggregators to compensate us. I mean, if they can do that with Netflix in Indonesia right now, why not they do the same with this news aggregators? So yeah, I'm totally agree with that. On the second question about this is basically about why the media. So basically, this is why the media has not been more aggressive about the government lying about COVID, or they have made problematic statement about COVID. I think, well, and this is I cannot speak for others, but from the experience of the Jakarta Post, and I have mentioned this earlier about, I think we have been consistent in sort of questioning how the government has performed in their job in dealing with COVID. And I believe Tirto, and to some extent, for instance, Tempo, we have been really aggressive in demanding accountability from certain minister, and I know who's this minister. So to the point when we ask a specific demand about, okay, we have problem with this guy, and maybe we should do something about this. And we have made this clear in our news publication, in our editorial, in some of the commentary, that we need to do something about how the government has been lacking in its response. And this is especially in the first 3 months, I think, when we sort of caught off guard with this huge pandemic that has wreaked havoc in Indonesia. So I don't have to agree with that observation. I think Tirto, the Jakarta Post, Tempo, and Kompas has done a significant amount of job to sort of question the role of the government in dealing with this.
Thank you, Taufik. Restu, do you have a comment on this?
Okay, adding Mas Taufik about how the media, the mainstream media respond to counter statement from the government. So far, all we have to do is more, wider the discussion about it. So we do have some collaboration project. We ever do that with Jakarta Post as well. For Nama Baik Kampus, it's for another issue. But in COVID, we often make some collaboration projects, so it can wider discussion in social media, because it will be published in not only one media like Tirto.id, only in Tirto.id, but also in other media that we collaborated with. So this is I think we believe this is the effective way to counter the government statement or the incompetent government handling this pandemic situation. And also we in newsroom always questioning about what government announce or government states. We also suspicious that and I know it's kind of overwhelmed for us, but I think it's our job to make this situation more balanced. And also we have a fact check channel in our website. If there are many, status posts in social media, we with Facebook doing the fact checking and publish it in articles. So that and we also have agreement with Instagram that when we have fact check it, the post gonna be notify will appear that this post has been fact checked with by Tirto.id, that this is the false information, something like that. So this is a job that we still doing to as we do as best we can to give the valid information to the readers. Also about Facebook government, Australian government to pay news aggregation with to Facebook. So I agree with that, because I remember that I wrote the articles when it published. Oh, okay, I will publish it in Tirto as well. So because it's kind of interesting. So yeah, we totally agree with that.
Thank you, Restu. Ross, do you want to have a comment on this?
Brief comment to Putti's question. Just to talk about the way in which news is disseminated. Jakarta, Indonesia's media is really strongly Jakarta-centric. Most Indonesian media organizations have their head offices in Jakarta. The majority of the journalists who operate are in Jakarta. And the Jakarta audience is like a huge revenue base for advertisers. So when advertisers are advertising to media companies, they're thinking about Jakarta-based audience. So we have a really Jakarta-centric news service creation, which means that they rely a lot on government sources. So when government sources are quoted, they're quoted regularly and they're quoted widely, and it spreads out throughout the rest of the archipelago. So what governments and ministers say matters hugely, because it's such a big part of how Indonesian media reports. It's the big part of quoting the official sources, the detik.com and kompas.com, and all of these .com news really operate around the short, sharp grab from a quote from a government official. So it makes it even more important that they think about what they say and they get it right. But also the Indonesian media probably has to reflect a little bit about their role in this. Do we just quote official sources, uncritically, or at least, to get clickbait out of, as Terawan's comments often were about? And that doesn't really serve the public interest.
Thank you, Ross. Let me now read a couple of comments from attendance, but also I'd like to remind our participants to fill in the polling. That's for our improvement. So the first question, Ross just mentioned about clickbait, and there's this question about the tension between clickbaits and journalism integrity. So Pak Shauki Lukman asked, how would journalists or editors in Jakarta Post and Tirto.id compromise the demand in gaining demand for clicks or views with putting best practice in journalism? That's first question. And the second question is from Lydia Napitupulu. She's wondering whether the struggles of independent journalism in Indonesia could be because of one, lack of improvement in quality, and two, readers moving to international media. For example, she mentioned about Washington Post, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. They're actually seeing increasing number of online subscribers, actually a very fast increase. What about that in Indonesia? She also mentioned about the conversations, for example, seems to be gaining readers. So could the panelists discuss more about efforts on improving the quality of Indonesian independent news media? Again, let me start with Taufik.
So the first one was on
clickbaits and
clickbait, sorry. Well, I have to admit, as sort of old gray lady kind of publication, I think we we tend to shy away from clickbait, and I believe, well, and maybe you can see this from our website, we don't do that very often, but I think once in a while, or this is when the slow news day happens, we have to do that, and also because we want to keep up with what the readers want. I think the last time we did that, I think this is yesterday. This is when the Jakarta governor decided to post that photo, and probably this is not clickbait in a traditional sense of the word for Indonesian reader, but I believe this is the kind of the sort of the ideal clickbait story for probably the Jakarta Post audience. This is when this governor posts a photo with the book, the How Democracy Dies book, and we decided to do that, and because this is, I think, what you can describe as sort of the ideal clickbait story for the Jakarta Post audience, because we certainly don't want to go down the road of sort of the celebrity story or snake eating man kind of stuff too very often. So yeah, we don't in principle we don't do that very much, but once in a while we have to engage with readers who probably more sensational story, but that's not really our modus operandi. And the second question is about how to sort of improve the quality of our journalism when we have to face a stiff competition from international media. Well, I have to admit that this is a serious problem for us, because there's no way we can compete with this Washington Post with money from Jeff Bezos or the New York Times. It has all the wherewithal to do whatever they want, and we operate with very limited capability. And especially now, I believe this is more difficult for us to sort of, with all the situation that I have mentioned earlier, I think this is going to be more difficult for us to sort of going head to head with this giants, even some of the smaller giants. But I think, and this is in the case of the Jakarta Post, and I believe this is the case also with Tirto. We have our own niche that we can cater to. I believe that Jakarta Post has its own audience, and this is simply from the fact that we are the only English newspaper in the country. For all the foreign news, you can get it from the Washington Post, from the New York Times, or from The Economist, from Financial Times. But information about Indonesia, I think most people outside of Indonesia, they still rely on us. And I think the breakdown from data that we have from our global audience. And this is sort of split 50-50. So we have quite a huge number of audience abroad. Probably this is foreigners wanting to know more about Indonesia, foreigners wanting to do business, researchers wanting to know more about Indonesia. So we have a huge audience abroad. And if I have to speak in Google's term, this actually brought in and still bring in a significant chunk of revenue, because probably the money, ads money from the US audience is bigger. So we still believe that we can still rely on this pool of audience. And the challenge for us is how to sort of continue doing what we're doing with now more limited capability without having to compromise some of the basic information that we need to provide for our international audience. So yeah, it's tough, but yeah, we're hanging there.
Okay, thank you. Restu?
Okay, about the first question is
About the clickbait and
yeah. Actually, we following the sensational issue, but in different way. So I will share screen. This is the articles about Diantina. On November 18, Diantina become a trending topic in Twitter because she changing her faith. So she convert to Christian from Muslim, and then her name become trending topic, and we think a lot. We think very hard how we keep up with the social media, with the traffic. Meanwhile, there's a trending topic about Diantina that this is not about our issue actually. So we wrote about her in different way, in other perspective. We found out that she is a gender equality activist and RUU PKS supporters. So we wrote about that and how she doing her advocation and her activism about the issue of gender equality, and it works. So for now, we doing this formula for maybe when there is another trending the photo of the pictures of Governor Anies Baswedan greet the how democracy died, and how we keep up with the issue is we wrote about the books, how we review the books how democracy died, and this is another way to keep up with the social media issue. That's how we do it. So I know we have to we still stay in our principle about to keep our integrity, our quality in our content, but actually we can play it with the sensational issue that we can keep that can keep the traffic, but also we can keep our quality of journalism.
Okay, thank you, Restu. We'll take two more questions in this last round. There are two questions from the Q&A box. One is from Dika. Dika, do you want to ask directly?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the panelists. My question is, I think this phenomenon of trusted media journalism really struggling to compete with the digital media space with probably low reliability in terms of providing factual news that takes place not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries. Do you have any thoughts? What would be, like the first best or maybe the second best solution to this? When you see what's going on in other countries, do you think any learning experience that you can grab that can be implemented in Indonesia? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dika. And let me read the last question. This is interesting from Jim Nolan. He asked, do the panelists see any significance in the incoming Biden administration for renewed US government assistance to the cause of free press NGOs? Okay, so maybe we start with Restu. You are on mute, Restu.
I will answer first the question from Dika about how we manage the the hoaxes, maybe you mean, and this is how we do it. That actually we never write an article or hard news about the sensational issue, or we said that it's jurnalisme ludah, apa ya Mas Taufik ya itu istilahnya ya, statement. We never write the articles only about the statement of one pejabat ya, something like that. But we do write the clarification, or we clear the statement about that. It's like, we have some keyword in our articles. Maybe I have to share screen.
Maybe because we don't have much time, Restu.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
So we have some keywords in our articles that say duduk perkara. So we clarified the issue, the statement from the government or some public figure about an issue, and we clarified that, and that's how we countered the issue or the hoaxes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Taufik?
I thought the second question was, what will the effect of the Biden administration to the media? But this is a really different issue, because Biden is an old person, so probably it's going to bring, good news for old journalism, like print media is going to thrive again, because he's going to read only the newspaper and not the social media or online publication. But I believe the problem does not lie with whatever the U.S. government will decide. I think the key issue will be what the U.S. government will decide with regards to the news aggregators, the big tech giants, and I believe the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate is doing something about this. But I think the solution maybe lie there on how the stranglehold of this tech giant is constraining what we have to do in terms of journalism. So until there's an equitable level playing field, then it's going to be very difficult for us to go back to the old model. Well, I don't want to idealize the old times, but I believe we need level playing field to sort of maintain the operation and to pay for basic journalism, and without having to worry about working so hard and then someone else taking the advantage simply by having this platform. So probably that I can respond to. Yeah.
Thank you, Taufik. Ross, any comment?
Yeah, on the question of are any other countries doing well, I guess the short answer is no. I mean, it's a challenge for everyone globally, and every country has their own context or local context in the ways in which they're struggling around the digital revolution and the decline in trust in news, which is a global phenomenon brought about by the internet and the rise of populism. So, you know, the one thing, of course, we can say in Australia is that we do have a trusted, a reliable public broadcaster in the ABC. On any survey that you look on, you know, trust in media, the ABC always rates very highly, in the 70%, I think 70 to 80%. So it's a real benefit that we have here. Indonesia, of course, has a long history of a state broadcaster. In other words, you know, TVRI and Antara and these kind of organizations, which essentially just pump out, you know, government news and government directives delegated by the government since the new order. So unfortunately, when you look at how the ratings of, say, TVRI, they're really low, 1.4% or something like that. And frankly, a lot of Indonesians are either more interested in TV1 or Metro TV or something like that, or they just don't trust that TVRI is an independent organization. So how does Indonesia and many other countries try to have perhaps more public broadcasting, which is in the public interest, not in the state's interest, is a massive challenge for the media landscape, as it is in Malaysia and elsewhere. And indeed in America, you know, PBS has been drastically underfunded in America for decades. And that's part of the problem where you've got this polarized media landscape that we really, thankfully, don't see as much in Australia.
Thank you, Ross. With that, before I give it back to Nuke, on behalf of Indonesia Project, I'd like to thank all the speakers, Ross Tapsell, Taufiqurrahman, and Restu Diantina, and all the participants. I apologize if there are some questions that we could not address at this time. And let me give this floor back to Nuke to tell us what's the future agenda at Indonesia Project webinar series. Over to you, Nuke.
Thank you, Acho. Thank you, Ross, Kak Taufik, and Mbak Restu. We only have one webinar left, which is next week, on Tuesday. Please note that this is not going to be the usual Wednesday, but it's going to be on Tuesday, 3:30, which is 11:30 Indonesia time, waktu Indonesia Barat. And this would be Indonesia and COVID-19, end of year reflection and the way forward. In this special webinar, we invite 6 colleagues for conversations about Indonesia and COVID-19. Professor Budi Resto Sudarmo will talk with Dr. Tipi Anas from the Ministry of Finance on the government's response to the pandemic. Dr. Liza Munira will discuss public health issues with Professor Tiki Pangestu from the National University of Singapore. And Professor Hal Hill will converse with Dr. Khatib Basri on the economic aspect. So we look forward to this one next week, and please join us. And thank you so much for your attendance throughout this year, and we hope for a better year next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ini Aco, kita tutup ya.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thanks, Ross, Taufik, Restu.
Mas Taufik.
Thanks, Mas Anto.
Thanks, Ross.
Terima kasih semua.
Yeah.
Yeah.